We are now going to turn to two actors in that development space, firstly from UNDP and then from the Office for the High Commissioner for Human Rights. Hi, Justus.
Hi, hello.
Hi, the floor is yours. Please go ahead.
Thank you very much. To start from the premise of leaving no one behind, which is enshrined in the Agenda 2030 and expressed in the Sustainable Development Goals. And we carry out a number of projects. The most visible ones that I hope many of you have already encountered are the Being LGBTI In projects. The oldest one is in Asia, 20 countries. We've produced 8 country reports so far, and a report on legal gender recognition in 9 countries, with a big shout out to Jack Byrne, who was instrumental in writing that report. Being LGBTI in Eastern Europe reached 4 countries, and the same amount of country reports were produced. And we had a regional, sorry about the typo, intersex report, which was the first time that intersex issues in the Balkans were highlighted. Sexual orientation and gender identity and rights in Africa just started together with our colleagues from UNHCR, OHCHR, apologies, in 9 countries. And Being LGBTI in the Caribbean also just started in 4 countries. We produce knowledge products, including the country reports that I just mentioned, and the report on legal gender recognition. And we also work with parliamentarians. We produced a handbook for parliamentarians supporting the engagement on law review and reform, international and regional human rights instruments, monitoring dialogue, and disseminating good practices and lessons learned. But what I really want to focus on is our work on the LGBTI Inclusion Index. And that whole work started with the Sustainable Development Goals and the understanding that the goals are inclusive of LGBTI people, and I use LGBTI, which is, as Emily just mentioned, a global north concept, but I use it as a stand-in for all sexual gender minorities, people with diverse sex characteristics, and others who fit into the broad, very broad defined umbrella. So starting with the Sustainable Development Goals, we realized that there was a need for more and better monitoring of LGBTI people's inclusion in those goals if we wanted to reach those left furthest behind first, which is an important aspect of the SDGs. We wanted to address the severe data gap that we all know exists for LGBTI people. Stigma and discrimination, as Emily just pointed out, impedes development and threatens the progress on the SDGs. Issues are complex because LGBTI communities are diverse. And discrimination and exclusion is invisible because of lack of data at the national and global scale. So our solution is, there we go. Our solution is based in a broad, multidimensional concept of well-being and inclusion. We work together with the World Bank on the development of a set of indicators that will be published soon. We're in the final stages of review. Those indicators are based in the definitions by the World Bank of inclusion, which is the process of improving ability, opportunity, and dignity of people disadvantaged on the basis of their identity to take part in society. And UNDP's definition, which is access to opportunities and achievement of outcomes for LGBTI people. So this is a multifaceted view of inclusion, and in order to come to a measurement of LGBTI inclusion that is comprehensive and paints a picture for lesbian and bisexual women, other bisexual people, gay men, trans people, intersex people. We first decided that this needed a methodology that combines the mixed methods of data collection. It needs to include laws and policies, which is most of the data that we currently have. Implementation of laws and policies, which we felt was really important to reflect whether or not those laws and policies are actually lived up to. Public opinion, and certainly also surveys of LGBTI people. This process was an inclusive process and a consultative process. It started in 2015 with the first round of consultations that resulted in the focus on 5 dimensions of inclusion of LGBTI people. Political and civic participation, education, health, personal security and violence, and economic well-being. Through a series of consultations following that, both with civil society specifically and multi-stakeholder consultations that also included, aside from civil society, also academia, governments, other international organizations, the private sector, and I'm sure I'm forgetting some, both online and offline in an in-person meeting. We arrived at 51 indicators, roughly 10 indicators per dimension. And I want to focus now on those indicators that I feel could be important or could serve as guidelines for UNRISD in your research going forward. Those 51 indicators that we've identified so far are indicators that we put into 3 different tiers. Tier 1 indicators are indicators where we already have data at a global scale. Those are, for example, indicators on laws around criminalization of same-sex sexual conduct, public opinion in large parts of the world. So those are indicators that are already there and ready to use. Tier 2 indicators are indicators where we don't currently have data for global scale, but that could be gathered with a relatively limited amount of resources and time. And tier 3 indicators are indicators that would take much more resources and time to gather, and most of those are indicators that are survey-based and that foresee surveying of LGBTI people. So I'm going to focus on tier 2 indicators, which are mostly around laws and legal practices, but not exclusively. And I just wanted to highlight those indicators in the 5 dimensions, both to give you an idea of the kinds of indicators that we're talking about, and also where UNRISD could focus its future research. So in education, the 2 indicators that fall into this category are bullying and harassment in schools is outlawed, and discrimination in schools is outlawed. For political and civic participation, the indicators would be decriminalization of gender expression. Self-determination of gender is a possibility in that country. There are centralized protocols for sex or gender updates in a legal sense. There's statistical inclusion of LGBTI people, and by that we mean that national statistics offices and other governmental collectors of statistics actively include LGBTI people in their statistics in a disaggregated fashion. And the existence of national LGBT, trans, and or intersex organizations. In the dimension of economic well-being, this would be about implementation of employment non-discrimination laws. We know where those laws exist, but we don't really know whether they're actually being implemented or whether there's a method to actually use these laws to claim the rights that are enshrined in the law books. For health, the indicators would be whether or not patient non-discrimination laws or policies exist, the protection of medical records, informed consent, including for anal exams and HIV tests, is a necessity for medical practice. Variations in sexual orientation, gender identity, and expression and sex characteristics are considered healthy. And a big shout out to Mark Cabral, who's led the work on the ICD reform that came to a really wonderful, not conclusion, but highlight yesterday with the WHO announcement of the ICD-11. So I'm bowing my head. Amazing work. But that doesn't mean necessarily that it'll take some time for that to reflect in national policy. So this indicator is unfortunately not one that we can just skip now. The next indicator is whether or not gender-affirming care exists in the country, whether or not sexual orientation, gender identity, expression, sex characteristics, sensitive reproductive health care does exist in the country, and the absence of forced or coercive sterilizations. Last but not least, personal security and violence. There are quite a few indicators here that could be relevant for UNRISD. That's that normalizing and parentheses, surgeries for intersex children are outlawed. Conversion therapy, so-called conversion therapy is outlawed. The existence of hate crime legislation. There's no recorded violence against human rights defenders working on sexual orientation, gender identity, expression, and sex characteristics. Asylum on grounds of sexual orientation, gender identity, expression, and sex characteristics exists. The justice sector has mandatory training on LGBTI issues. There's a domestic body that monitors anti-LGBTI violence and one that monitors violence in institutional settings. And the existence of policies on protecting LGBTI people in detention. So that's a very, very brief and quick run-through of indicators that we felt could be something that, if UNRISD is looking for work, here's your agenda. Another issue in creating an index out of these 51 indicators, we're running into some challenges in terms of data collection. Who are we counting? The definition of identity or community can be very different from in different parts of the world. Identities don't neatly overlap from one culture to another. It's not very easy to compare transvestites, women in the US to travesti in South America. It's definitions of who is gay also vary very widely from one country to another. In some countries, it's all men who have sex with men. In other countries, it's only men who have sex with men who are also perceived to be feminine. The next big issue is, are we counting them all? How are we reaching small or criminalized communities? How are we reaching, especially on a global scale, people who are not connected to the internet? How are we reaching people who are not literate and would not be able to participate in an online survey? How are we reaching communities who don't necessarily identify as LGBTI, because that's a concept of identity that doesn't apply to them. Identity itself is a very global North concept, especially individual identity. In large parts of the world, identity is much more a group experience than something that happens only to you. And last but not least, the safety of individuals and communities and researchers is a huge issue that we have to take into account in any kind of data collection. Again, these are challenges that UNRISD could certainly be helping us on finding an answer. So the next steps for developing an index out of these indicators is we're currently developing methodology to come to that point. We'll be consulting in a number of regional consultations to ensure that what we're actually measuring is making sense in all parts of the world. We'll be pilot testing in a small number of countries. First of all, to figure out whether or not the indicators work in a real world setting, but also to find out which indicators are most indicative of inclusion of lesbian women, bisexual people, gay men, trans people, and intersex people in a wide variety of countries, and use those indicators that are most telling to come up with an index that can give us the quick and dirty rundown of inclusion is happening well in this place, but not so much in that place. And because there's the biggest issue with inclusion is in country X, that's where the majority of our resources need to go. So that's it for me for now. I'm very happy to answer any questions. You can also email me or my colleague Bojan Konstantinov, who's leading our work on this. As I said, the indicators are in the last stage of internal review, the proposed set of indicators, I should say, and we hope to be publishing them on UN term short timeline, which I hope will be within the next month. Thank you.